An old Mamod traction engine rebuild. This one is part 2, how to dismantle the engine. I don't think this is going to be a very difficult job, or at least relative to some of the other jobs that I do. To start with, I'm removing the part that is described as the scuttle. On a larger traction engine, this would be described as the bunker, but on these small Mamods, everyone seems to refer to it as the scuttle, as in coal scuttle, even though it doesn't hold any coal. Instead, it holds this methylated spirit burner. I'm giving it a bit of a clean with some Scotch-Brite. So now it looks a little bit better. It's never going to be perfect, but such is life. You can actually buy much better versions of these from eBay. A new original one is a surprisingly large amount of money for what it is. I'm not going to buy a new one, I'll reuse this. The cleaned up methylated spirit burner joins the scuttle in the plastic box. In this clip, I'm removing the canopy. The engine that I'm dismantling is a Mamod TE1A. I'm going to rebuild this as a hybrid version of a TE1. A TE1A canopy is different to the one fitted to the TE1 model. More about this as the series progresses. This is a part I bought via eBay. It was £50. Have I gone mad? Well, no, not recently. This is an original TE1 model that's been dismantled and it's never been run. The first thing I noticed though is that the paintwork on the TE1 is a different kind of green to the one on the TE1A. This is good for me because according to my memory, the TE1 that I had as a child was painted in a brighter green than the TE1A model. Time to disassemble the motion. The flywheel is just a push fit on this shaft, so I'm pulling it off the shaft. On the one I had, I think the flywheel was held to the shaft with a screw. If you're doing this yourself, be very careful when you remove the spring-loaded bolt. Watch this. I hadn't anticipated the strength of the spring, so both the bolt and the spring flew across the workshop. I soon found the bolt, but the spring was more difficult, but with the help of a telescopic magnet, here it is. And before it has time to escape again, I put it in the plastic box. This is the piston, and it seems to work okay when it's running on steam. I need to test it to see whether the seal in the cylinder is good. Don't forget, these Mamod steam engines do not have lubricators. The only lubrication available is as and when you apply some. But despite that, this piston is a very good fit in the cylinder. Listen when I pull it out. There are so many things I could do to this model to improve it, but I like it just the way it is. However, I cannot live with the bent crankshaft, so it's over to the lathe and I'm putting the crankshaft in the 3-jaw chuck, but only supporting it by the part that is normally inside the flywheel, because that's where the bend is. The crankshaft isn't running very true, and if I slow the video down, you can see just how bent it is. I now need to straighten this crankshaft. I have a special tool for this, and it's called a great big hammer. This is a nylon-faced hammer, so it will not mark the work, and I'm tapping the crankshaft with it to see what happens. I've done this many times over the years, so I have lots of experience in bashing crankshafts with hammers. Unfortunately, I'm making this job look fairly easy, but it's not. You need some practice. So before trying to straighten a crankshaft, bend a piece of steel the same diameter, put it in the chuck and tap away with the hammer. And when you get it nearly straight, straighten it perfectly by tapping it nearer the chuck. As you can see, this one is now quite good. Well, it's straight in fact. Far better than it was. I could use a dial test indicator to get it perfect, but I think this one will be more than good enough for the tolerances on a Mamod steam engine. Many times in the past, I've used exactly the same method for straightening the crankshafts of Stuart model steam engines. Now the crankshaft and the flywheel and the piston and the cylinder can all go in the plastic box. According to what I've seen online and read, the thread of this level plug is 2BA, so it's going to be a very simple job to make another one. To test this, I'm removing the plug from the TE1A traction engine and fitting it in the TE1. Here you can see that the TE1 has a special bracket to support the canopy. One very important part not to forget to put in the plastic box is this, a simple yet ingenious part of the engine. This is the reversing lever. And here are most of the parts in the plastic box. Now to tackle the wheels. The first thing to do to get the front wheels off is to remove this special nut on the extension rod of the front axle beam. You fit a special handle into the top and you can walk along steering the engine as it runs. This shaft is not what it seems, it's threaded at both ends. The centre part of it is a bit thinner. Here is an interesting rebuild option. You could easily turn this thing into a Mamod TE1 chopper. But the more I look at this potential modification, I think I'll pass on that. Instead, I'm removing the shaft entirely. Not forgetting two quite important parts, a spring and a nut that fit into the specially shaped piece at the base of the smoke box. The spring and the nut apply positive pressure to the axle beam, so it will effectively stay where it's put. Now for the tricky bit. Removing the axle cap so you can slide out the axle to get the wheel off is quite difficult to do. The best way to do it, I suppose, would be to use a small spanner. The design of these traction engines is a little bit non-mechanical in this area. The axle itself just fits through the firebox, which is made of very thin material. On a TE1A model, the firebox has some pressings on it, which locally strengthen the area that supports the axle. On the TE1, there's no such pressings, so that's even weaker. Very slowly and very carefully, I removed the end of the axle cap. The axle is a bit burred over now, so I'm using a needle file to clean it up so I can slide the wheel off. And now all of the wheels are in the plastic box, complete with every other part that I took off the engine. What I have left is basically scrap. In the foreground is the new TE1 traction engine part, complete with a whistle that I bought from the same seller on eBay. And as for the TE1A, well, that's going to be consigned to the scrap bin. But I may dismantle the old assembly so you can see clearly how it's put together. In my opinion, this earlier part is much nicer all round, and after cleaning and painting some of the parts, I can start reassembly. But that's it for this episode. I'd just like to say to you all, stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.